This video is to reveal how the true record of human origins was hidden behind the timeline of evolution. To understand how and why this greatest deception was achieved, first we must understand how the record of humanity's past events was manipulated by splitting the timeline. The main split in humanity's timeline was history and prehistory. So the difference between history and prehistory has a lot to do with the way they were recorded. A lot of what we call history only come into existence with the invention of papyrus and text. But what we call prehistory can be traced back as far as 4 million years of human civilization, which doesn't consist of scrolls or texts, but inscriptions and carved figurines.
The goddess.
Now, history began 7,000 years ago, and history is synonymous with what modern professors today call the dawn of civilization. The deception of it all is the word civilization and the implication of it. What modern science wants us to believe is that prior to 7,000 years ago, or prior to the year 3100 BC, because the year 3100 BC is said to be the beginning of history, which is synonymous with the beginning of quote unquote civilization. So in a nutshell, everything before 3100 BC is known as prehistory, and that's the area of focus that we will be focused mainly on today. But first we got to deal with a lot of deception that took place to hide prehistory from you. So the year 3100 BC would be the year that is synonymous with the beginning of history, which is also synonymous with the dawn of civilization. Modern scientists want to convince us today that prior to the year 3100 BC, which was around 7,000 years ago, humans weren't civilized. And when they use the word civilized, they're referring to a primitive type Flintstone setting of a human. We've all seen these caveman type depictions of these dumbed down humans on a Flintstone type level. This is the type of human that they want to convince us existed prior to the year 3100 BC. Now there was a transitioning area that we're going to go through in a minute, and we're going to show you how they say we transition from these two types of humans, as well as the true ancient account of our human origins. We will check them both out and you can make up your own mind. Understand that history is basically the beginning of civilization and not the beginning of humans. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that most of the world make today, since most history is told to us from a perspective of in the beginning. The scientific account of history that's given to us by modern reverends of scientism is that billion years ago, of course, humanity evolved from a cosmic soup known as a Big Bang explosion. We'll talk about that later. But as that Big Bang timeline moved forward, we find that scientism parallels the world religions in the beginning. For example, the biblical in the beginning, which is 7,000 years ago, coincides with the beginning of civilization. So what are the powers that be hiding from us, and what is the timeline deception here? Well, we must understand that those in power we call world governments are at the foundation of world deception, and that the word government means to govern the mental. This is important when we talk about the difference between history and prehistory, because basically the word prehistory is synonymous with the word pre-dynastic. So when you want to research what life was like in prehistoric time, you have to research pre-dynastic records. And these pre-dynastic records were hidden behind the dynasties or the dynastic records. So the rise of the first pharaohs meant the creation of new calendars and a new age and the beginning of the new world order. And we'll talk about later why that pyramid is on the back of our dollars. The word prehistory is synonymous with the word pre-dynasty. So this was a time before humans were governed, or what scientists call civilized, basically when we were wild humans, as they call it. You think of the difference between a wild lion and a civilized lion, it would be the difference between a wolf or a coyote versus a shih tzu or a chihuahua. One has failed from its wild state and failed into a more domesticated state. So the same thing happened to humans 7,000 years ago. There was a great shift in consciousness, and we left what was called in the Bible the Garden of Eden. Now, I'm just giving you a quick overview. We're going to go into all of this in detail. This Garden of Eden was also called a golden age. Now, everything prehistoric, again, is pre-dynasty. This was pre-government. This was the time when humans weren't ruled over by any dynasties, pre-dynasty, okay? Everything after this time is the dynastic age, and we've been in a dynastic age for the past 7,000 years where we've been ruled over by world governments that governs the mental of the masses like herds of sheep. Prior to this, nature governed our actions and we live solely off the land. But what I want to teach in this series of videos is how the transition took place and also how pre-dynastic records were hidden by the dynasties, which is today's royal families. Basically, the book of Genesis is a book of genealogy or genetics of those royal families that assumed the throne and began a new world order. The new world order is also synonymous with 3100 BCE, the rise of Norma, the beginning of history, and the beginning of what they call civilization. When they so-called civilized the masses, is basically when they said we tamed you. So we got to understand that everything prior to what they call civilization is pre-dynastic, and this is a cursed time. So this is synonymous with matriarchal societies that lived in autonomous villages that were governed by women gardeners. This is why Eve was cursed in the garden and man was given dominion over the women and children and animals. And we will talk about how the transitioning of ages and the drastic changes of social structure is synonymous with the changes of human diets and the way we interact with nature. This is why the Garden of Eden is a big change, a big shift, because we left our natural vegan diets and gardening-based social structures to being meat eaters, because the world was transitioning from gardening-based societies to hunting societies. After we were cursed from the garden, and this is just a mythical account of what literally happened. What happened with the book of Genesis is that the pre-dynastic records were hidden behind this story. So the 4 million years of matriarchal societies that were vegan-based human cultures that thrived on this earth and lived under women gardeners, plant-based societies, that was hidden because they gave you the truth. They told you in the beginning there was a vegan-based type of human, which was Adam and Eve, but they lied about Adam being created first and woman coming from his rib. The ancestors taught that all things come from the womb of the woman, just like they do today. We're not pulling babies from men's ribs today, and you never saw it happen. So this is an unnatural thing that's contrary to what we naturally see. But we'll talk about that later. Now, this was all to hide the true lineage or genetics of humanity by pulling the woman from Adam's rib. They had to create a womb on Adam to change the succession. So the book of Genesis starts the genetics of the royal families that rule over us. Prior to these royal families, we didn't have national flags. We had family crests, and you had inheritance to the land, just like animals do, based upon you being a natural human being born from the womb of your mother. You're part of a bloodline. So we traded that inheritance with the beginning that the Genesis story gives us. and it gave us a new genetic story. And that day one,